Hello.
Hello.
You hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah.
We can keep like
woman with the
jumping seats.
So anyone wants to join us? We were talking backstage. We have many seats here. Hello. I'm Jude Rogers. I'm a music journalist. I was asked here today to speak to two ladies, one of whom is sadly lying horizontal on a bed in her house. Peggy Seeger did her back in quite badly. She's been texting apologies today. She really wanted to be here, and
So did
the
we
lady next
want
to
her to
me.
be here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we have to just cope with the two of us now, I'm afraid. The lady next to me needs no introduction, I'm sure. We're going to talk for the next 40 minutes or so about activism, but also the lady next to me, her kind of experience as an artist for the last... How many years is it now, my dear?
Too many. I like that you're calling me lady and I'm wearing a boy hat.
Yeah.
I like that. Just like that.
I looked the last 20-odd years, the reactions within the music industry to her work, and obviously her own activism and how she kind of relates to that through her music and through the things that she does. So without further ado, I'll say hello to Peaches.
Hello.
Okay. So we've been sitting backstage and wondering how today would go without the dear Peggy. That was a bit of a shame without Peggy.
Yeah, we were talking about what you were saying about what music you like and how you can relate to my music and also relate to Peggy's music. So I see myself also somehow as a folk musician in a way. I mean, I don't really feel like I'm like dance, techno, like I quite minimal. I mean, I come actually from a folk background.
Yeah.
I actually started in theater because I didn't know anything about like being involved in the arts when I was growing up. I mean, I was a spaced out kid, and I really didn't know you could be a musician if your family didn't play music together and stuff. And my mom's tone deaf, and my dad was a semi-pro ball player. I mean, they're great, intelligent, loving parents, but I didn't know about that. And art school, I didn't even know what art school was. Like, I didn't understand school for that. And the creativity that I got in my school was so linear that I just I couldn't deal with it, like, because it wasn't set in a way that gave you a chance to process creativity or to generate, your own thought. It was more like, we're gonna play the recorder now, play a B note, or whatever it is, and you're like, okay, you're out of the recording choir. So, things like that. So I ended up in theater just because that's I was like, oh, people doing things on a stage,
Yeah. And that's where I wanted to start, really, kind of going back to your early years. I'm very fascinated with the idea of the young Meryl. I'm in Toronto.
Spacing out.
And also, kind of, your formative influences. You've talked about them a lot in previous interviews.
Yeah.
And, people like Joan Jett, who kind of had this kind of very powerful kind of impression on you quite young.
Yeah.
What was your epiphany? Kind of, did you have a moment when you realised that you wanted to do something quite different with your life as a teenager or in your early 20s?
I mean, I had a few epiphanies actually, which is really exciting. But one was not really. One was more. I didn't really understand. Like I said, I didn't know what kind of art or whatever. But one was just that I went away in the summer when I was like 17. It sounds really funny, on a trip to Israel, and but I took off. I was with a group, on one of those bad buses where you go, and I took off and I went to like Egypt, to Nueva, and I lived under a date tree, and I just did and I was reading Siddhartha, and I was like, the river will take me, and I went down the Jordan River in an inner tube and would not paddle or anything. I'd just be like, it was the first time I realized you could just mind control and stuff. So it was somehow that got me into like wanting to be creative, wanting to go to my own.
You sort of run away from everybody else. And just
run away and did that. And then I went back to high school because at the time in Canada you still had grade 13.
Yeah.
And so I went back, and that was a really strange year for me. I would only like walk to school. I'd be writing like plays in my, on the way to school, but it was just a nice creative time.
And obviously, kind of the early part of your career as a musician, you'd been a teacher. I'm intrigued by your approach to class teaching. How did you take that with the youngsters? I've always been interested in this.
The thing is that when I got out of, I ended up going to university, and I went into a theater directing program because I thought I want to be a theater director. And then I got into a program with 5 other people. It was like this amazing thing. And then I hated it because I didn't want to work with actors. I thought I would have like a heart attack by the time I was 30 because of all the planning and yelling at people. When you're like heightened situation. And I didn't like that. I could do it. I can be a real, or whatever and be like, but I didn't. I was like, that's not going to be creative. And I'm going to end up yelling at people and doing logistics instead of that. So I dropped out, actually dropped acid.
Oh, dear.
And then the next day dropped out of the school program, which is true. I was like, yeah, I don't need to be there. And I did all these mixed media programs. I don't know if this is your question. I'm just going to go on and on. If you guys don't think this relates to activism, you can say there's a bunch of bollocks. Or do you like how I used?
You were a teacher.
But anyway, the thing is,
you've got this kind of drive within you to kind of tell people certain things about your life in a certain way, which is obvious through the music you've made ever since.
Right.
As well.
So if you want to butt in, go ahead. So because to me this was important. I went to a lot of mixed media classes. So it was the first time that I had ever drawn. I went to a drawing sculpture class. I've never drawn in my life. And okay, you have to excuse me because the teacher was English, like proper English lady. And she came up to me, she saw me drawing, and she said, "You're stupid. What is that?" I was, in front of the whole class. And I'm like, "I'm drawing." She's like, "That is not drawing." And it was really like, I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be in this creative 101 art class. I've never drawn, that's why I'm here. So it was, again, that learning where they put you in a box,
Right.
And then we went on to painting, and she came up again. Excuse the accent. "Where's the paint?" I was like, "It's right here, there's this color." That's why I was there. But everybody else was, of course, really great. And then sculpture, same thing. You had to make a self-portrait, and she'd be like, "Who is that?" Because she couldn't tell it was me. And then we started getting into like found art and like talking more conceptual. And I was like, I can deal with this. And we had to make a sculpture out of found objects. And I found like an old piano and all these pieces in a blender. And I made this monster. And then she's like, "Now you're brilliant. What happened to you?" So I'm really happy I stayed in the class, because
it's like an analogy for your life.
Yeah, it is all this structure and then the epiphany, like, wait, yeah, it's like So I don't know how that relates.
And did
to
you
anything.
impart the same sort of? Were your classes Weldon free when you were teaching yourself?
It's funny. I will get to my classes, but I just wanted to tell you because I took another mixed media class with dancers and musicians and visual artists and theater people, and they would put us into groups all together. And we had an instructor who would give us the framework, and he was a musician. So whenever we would have a project, he would give the framework and then a special part for musicians. And at the time, I wasn't seen as a musician, so I was always saying to him, why can the dancer be a visual artist in this exercise, but you never let the other people be musicians? Mm. So I was always challenging the teachers, and then he let me be a musician where I would, and then I went into the piano and I started playing the strings inside. I mean, I didn't know this stuff, so it was like, the point is, I'm really a firm believer, let people have their creative, opening or whatever it is. Even if they're, if they're a filmmaker, they should, try a dance. Mm. And I'm sure you're going to teach a dance or something, or if you're a visual artist, try to make music, and I'm sure a musician would be like, wow, I never thought of that, And that's what creativity is. And, and like I said, I never got that in school. So when I got out of university, I needed a job, and I worked in a daycare center, and it was the most soulless job. All the teachers were just so over it and exhausted, and of course there's too many kids. It's the YMCA, and the kids, there's like 25 kids to 2 teachers, and I was playing acoustic guitar, and I used to steal kids away, literally, like steal them away. It's probably like I could be arrested for that, but and then I would be singing songs, and I wanted to play guitar, because I wanted to play music, and I would make up songs about whatever, just fun things that kids like, stars, sun, moon, whatever, animals. And they would totally get so into it, like their imagination. I was like, oh my God, kids this age, their imagination is so open, they can realize anything, So I started to develop programs that would be like, quite very, very rudimentary, like, let's do animals one day, like lion, tiger, or whatever, or lion or monkey, blah, blah, blah. Sing a song about each one, and then I would say, now I'm just gonna play music and you be one. And then they would have to try all the other animals or whatever it was. And then I'd sit them down, and they'd be really excited to sit down again, which is a task in itself, that they're not pulling your hair and telling you you're ugly or something. But then I'd say, now you be whoever you want. And then even if you had like 10 elephants and 1 monkey, I wouldn't care. And then I'd make up a story about that. And they knew whenever I'd say, and then the elephant, they would come up, they would know. But this way they had a choice, and they got to role play, which is what they love to do at that age, between 3 and 5. So the teachers came back, and the instructor, the director, she was like, are you putting these kids under a spell? Like, what is this? I'm like, no, I'm just appealing to their actual base creativity. This is what they want to do, And so then I started teaching teachers how to be creative with kids with no training in education or any of this. So, and then I started my own programs, and always was not part of any school systems, but I would work at mostly private schools, because sometimes they would have a problem at the public schools without me having the education degree or whatever.
So basically, you're quite young at this point. You're kind of, just starting out with your career.
Yeah, I was like 22.
Yeah, and you've been given this kind of authority. It's interesting. The way you're talking about teaching reminds me of an interview you did a few years ago, when you were talking about, and you've said this in quite a few interviews, how you wanted to, the idea of Peaches was something that was very thought out, and you wanted to infiltrate pop culture. That was the quote that was used somewhere. And what I find interesting, if you look at your career as a musician, in some ways you work the absolute avant-garde in some respects. Some people would say, if my mum saw a video of yours, she hasn't, I don't think, but maybe she will after Facebooked about this today. I want to hear her reaction. Some people would say you're at that point, but obviously you are somebody who's also been on an R.E.M. album. You're somebody who's recorded with Christina Aguilera. You're somebody who is co-opted by the mainstream. Obviously there's different ways of judging if that is good or bad, but that is something that you obviously take a lot of pride in. So coming from the outside perspective and saying, do you know what, there's a different way of doing these things is obviously something important.
Yeah, I mean, I've always done it on my own terms. I've never been on like a major label or anything like that. Not that it even matters now. I even think that it's really interesting how, and exciting, the collapse of labels, It just seems like, as you say, that Peaches was really well thought out. Wasn't really. Nothing's ever been, like even those programs with the kids, or, wasn't really, or me becoming a musician, which turned out because I had an acoustic guitar and played somewhere one night. And with my girlfriend, we loved the Indigo Girls. We thought we were, exact prototype lesbian girl folk. And then it turned out we played there every week for a year, and I was like, I am a folk musician now, So things, and me being well thought out with the Peaches stuff was more just like certain ideas that I wanted to get down, but I had no idea that anybody would ever really hear it. You have to realize I never thought I would have a career in music or think of it as a career or anything.
When you obviously your first album came out in '95 as under the name of Meryl Niska.
Actually, well, I did some Mermaid Cafe.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was like 1990 and stuff.
But your first
cassettes.
the first kind of official, however, you take that same kind of album was '95, and then the Teachers of Peaches, which I remember vividly when I first heard it. I first heard that record, and as an impressionable 22-year-old, it was a record that obviously had quite a big effect. On the music press, kind of just went nuts for you. Because there was so many things to write about this new artist, and you were seen by some people as very provocative, and obviously you talked a lot at the time about the way that your lyrics were trying to kind of create a new space for kind of women to talk about anything, not just gender, but also lots of other issues. One thing I wanted to ask about that particular point of your career, kind of, was it interesting that people kept talking about you as a woman in that context? Because obviously one thing you've done with your activism, and we'll go on to talk about that, obviously your support of Pussy Riot recently, and ideas of gender. At that point, you were trying to talk about gender in a much more open way, but people were still trying to talk about you as, what this meant for women in pop or something like that. Was it difficult kind of to try and suddenly have to have all these things you had to say?
Well, it was just funny because some people would see my work as complete pornographic. Like, I was actually voted best album in Playboy that year. I was also in Hustler magazine, which to me was as important as being in Bust magazine, because that idea of infiltration, Bust is more preaching to the converted.
And those people don't know, Bust American kind of alternative women's magazine. Kind of,
and
very
Hustler, anybody?
Yeah, Hustler. Yeah, we'll tell you about that.
So what was interesting about being in Hustler is because they're as opposed to Playboy, they're even more airbrushed women, and then they have like the amateur, the people who send in their own pictures. Like, it's kind of a split, and I was on that page right in the middle, like looking really sweaty on stage with like a flaccid dildo screaming. And I remember they wanted to interview me, and I was like, this is a great moment for women. And because they were like, what's your ultimate man? And I just remembered this horrifying answer about someone saying what their ultimate woman was, and their ultimate woman was, she's got to be 3 foot high and have a flat head so I can put my beer on her head while she's sucking me off. So I basically said that about the ultimate man. So, and of course that's to people controversial. And why is it when it's when it was said by a man, and I heard it so many times, it wasn't like an outrage or something like that. And this happened a lot with things that I would say, that I would just be kind of reacting to all the classic rock music that I grew up with, that I loved, or the hip hop, that, these words got to be said by men, even in like old blues, or, it's just, they get to be said, and then I would switch them around, and then all of a sudden it's like switching the universe around. What are you doing?
And obviously, so that album did very well. And what was interesting about the songs off that record, they seemed to infiltrate pop culture in other ways. They got into film soundtracks. Fuck the Pain Away especially was a song that just seemed to kind of run through so many different things. Fatherfucker, when that came out, obviously, in the impact that the cover had, with you were sporting a very lustrous beard and staring straight into the camera. With that record, and obviously after that, Impeach My Bush came out in 2006. And these were seen as a kind of a progression of ideas, and you trying to push different ideas about gender. Were you aware of how much you were, kind of whipping up a storm in certain places by these things? Were you enjoying that?
It wasn't really. You have to understand that it wasn't my intention just to whip it up or whip it out, but it was just, I was excited that wow, actually I'm going to say what I want, and now I want to you know, the first album I always describe as more of a masturbatory album in a great way. And the second album more like as a role playing. And the third album, Impeach My Bush, is more of a big clusterfuck because I was, you know, getting more into like, you know, political ideas in my head and things like that. I mean, the song Fuck or Kill was because Cindy Sheehan at the time was doing her tour. She was the woman who stayed on Capitol Hill and wasn't going to move until President Bush talked to her because her son died in combat. And so there was a big concert in New York, and I was part of that, and I was like inspired to make that song for that. So there was more. So that's why Clusterfuck, more of political issues, not just my body, not just gender, not just role playing.
It's interesting what one thing you were saying just before we came on stage was, you know, you didn't start out as an artist to be political. You became political through what you were doing. You realised that the stuff you were doing was political.
Yeah.
When did that point kind of sort of take you over and you realised, you know, I can do these things that can, you know, have an impact in a wider level? You know, was it kind of in the middle of making records or just?
It just kind of evolved. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that, you know, you were seeing, you know, the things that are political kind of, you know, aren't always the things that
it all became political. Even Peaches became so political. Like I said, some people saw it completely pornographic. Some people saw it as like a great feminist statement. Some people saw it as a horrible move for women in general. You know, it's like I loved how many different opinions there were. That to me was real art, because all of a sudden everybody was having their own idea about it and had to have conversations about it and have to have opinions, not just like, yes, she is this way, you know? Although I made it this way, like, to me, it was so direct.
Yeah, and on Fuck the Pain Away, the thing that struck me when I first heard it were the lyrics about...
Or the song, yeah.
The song, yeah, kind of about the references to Debbie Harry and Chrissie Hynde. And there was this idea that, you know, not that you came from there was this heritage of female artists behind you, but, you know, you were kind of sticking your flag there and kind of saying there are certain people who have had this impact through pop culture that maybe their impact hasn't been talked about in the same sort of way.
Oh, they were just personally women that I thought were cool.
And Joan Jett also.
Yeah.
I interviewed Joan Jett a few years ago, and she said something. You know, she said a lot of interesting things. She's a really interesting woman. She kind of was talking about how there was this idea that you know that women can't do rock and roll properly or any sort of rock music, and you know, similarly with hip hop and rap and other areas. When you know, girls can play Beethoven and Bach, but they can't, you know, play guitar. Was that something that, you know, the fact that you looked in your videos and you know, kind of provocative and challenging, but the fact that the way you sang and the way you sing, the way you rap was also seen as part of that kind of controversy, really, you know, kind of that you had this kind of very impactful presence on stage. Did you know, that's something that people kind of obviously found quite challenging when you started out?
Yeah, when well, music and performance, actually, for the music part of it, I'm a singer. I'm gonna, I'm doing a little plug here. On the 19th, I'm gonna sing the whole Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yes, I was gonna come on to this.
And that's not a joke, and I'm singing the whole thing.
This is Peaches Christ Superstar.
I call it Peaches Christ Superstar. But it's you know, I'm singing Jesus, Mary, Judas, you know, Pilate, who's my favorite, and all the Romans. So I'm a singer, and I knew that, and I was like, you know what? I don't want people to focus on my singing if they like my voice. I want to, you know, and that's why I loved Chrissie Hynde, because she had just this cool voice and awesome lyrics. So I was like, I just want to, you know. And rap, and I love Salt and Pepper, you know, and I just wanted to do it kind of deadpan and see, you know, I wanted to focus on that. So yes, that was a reaction to that, and I thought Chrissie Hynde was one of the women who broke out of that kind of rock and roll stereotype of either like, and I love Pat Benatar, but she was like, you know, rock singer. you know. But Chrissy Hine was always.
Do you see kind of the art that you've done in the past as a sort of activism in a way? Looking back at what you've done as an artist.
Yeah, I hope that, I mean, I can only be, this is like so hippie and stuff, right? I can only be a vessel and a conduit. That's all I can be. I really believe that. And if I can help people realize what they need or who they need to be, or what they can realize through me the way I did through certain people, or if they can just enjoy it and party to their own beat that happens to be, you know, fuck the pain away or something, as opposed to like, I don't know, something else. I'm thrilled. I'm just thrilled that I can, you know, communicate and.
Do you like that term, the term of activist? If somebody says Peaches is an activist, is that something you?
I think, yeah, and I think that art needs to be active, you know, and activism is the way to be, to make it art. It has to promote, you know, conversation. It has to promote new art. It has to flip, you know. Of course, there's things that you can enjoy and just enjoy them for the sake of enjoying. And of course, when you're 11, there's always, you know, whether you grew up with Backstreet Boys or you grew up with like Barbra Streisand or something. That first music you have, it might be the most, you know, political thing or anything. You always have that. That is always going to be there. But things that flip it, things that, you know, excite you, that's got to be a part of it.
Isn't it obviously been a very interesting couple of years for activism in lots of different
Yes.
ways? What do you think? You know, but then again, with the culture in which we live, you know, kind of internet-driven, kind of short attention span, kind of 24/7, 365 culture. There's also a lot of cynicism and lots of reaction that's prompted from that. That is, you know, people can be very cynical about activism and the way that, you know, the impact that it can properly have. What do you think are the most difficult things to fight against with the kind of activism you do? And by that I mean the way you portray gender, the way you talk about different issues like that, but also the way you've supported Pussy Riot, which I will come on to in a bit more detail in a moment. What are the things that you have to feel like you have to fight against?
Well, the thing is when you get into the real activism and you start to fight for something, there's no end. It's so heart-wrenching because you know that there's no end. You're always like, I could do more. You have to like make sure you're still human about it. I think it's a problem because you're human and you want to help these human conditions, but you have to remember that you have to you know, not let it take you over to the point where you can't even, you know, live your own life. And you're like, well, what's your life worth? There's other people dying. It's just you can drive yourself mad for the levels of how active you can be in activism. So
it's fighting against those impulses within yourself as well as the things that are around you, I guess.
Yeah, and you know, even saying that, you feel like guilty, like, you know, I should do more.
Let's talk about Free Pussy Riot you did last year. When did you first become aware of Pussy Riot and what was going on in Russia?
I was aware of their videos. Me and my friends would watch them and we're like, these are the coolest people on the planet, you know? Because again, they were using art in the exact way that needed to help their situations and doing it for not on a stage and not for money, or they were doing it because it needed to change in the exact places they were doing it. And that to me was so interesting. And when they were, you know, arrested, that was shocking to me, actually. I couldn't believe it. And that's where I found out about them. There was a lot of artists who were writing letters, like, I don't know, I think the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Sting, but they were all playing in Russia, and so I think they felt like they had to say a statement, but it was just a letter. It didn't really seem that it was something that was like helping, really, it wasn't. And then I saw a lot of people artists who were making videos and planning, activism and wearing the mask and doing stuff, huge banners over, bridges and things. But people didn't know who they were, so they weren't getting attention. And I felt that me being who I am, I'm in the perfect position to be that middle person right there. I'm not superstar, I'm not playing in Russia, and I'm an artist, but I'm, I have a little higher profile, so I'm going to use it. I'm going to actively use my profile. I'm going to make a change.org site. I'm going to make a video that and call people to come and join me, and so that we can just march and celebrate a freedom that we had in Berlin, where I live, and also send a message.
And looking at the kind of the way it was talked about at the time, you didn't expect it to have the impact that it had.
No, I mean, I just called people to this small little cafe called Glory Hole, and 400 people showed up. They were just like, and I kind of forgot to tell them that we were coming. So there was like 400 people in their own, and we, the night before, my friend John Renaud, who helped a lot with the project, and Simone Jones, my niece, who wrote the song with me, we made like 100 Pussy Riot masks, and then people had brought their own and amazing costumes, and they were you just found out how many people were really willing to help but had no place to put the energy. And then, I remember the change.org people saying, like, you might get like 1,000 people, to sign your petition. And we had like, oh God, I forget how many, like almost 200,000. Yeah.
The figure I read was 250,000.
Which of course went to Putin, and it went, they ripped it up. So, impact?
No, but this is the interesting thing, it's how you kind of quantify that sort of impact. Yeah. Now, obviously, being at this weekend means a lot to you. This week it means a lot to you because you were basically doing everything at Meltdown. Last night you were on stage with Yoko Ono herself. She's around apparently.
Now I'm in the Yoko Ono, I'm in the Plastic Ono band now. So.
Yes, you're in the Plastic Ono band. Yeah. You are DJing. You are also doing something tomorrow.
Yes,
which
tomorrow.
you've forgotten briefly backstage. But obviously Yoko Ono's Cuts piece, which was one of her most famous works.
Yeah,
and something that you were recreating tomorrow night.
Yeah, on her request.
On her request. How long have you known Yoko? And kind of, it seems the way you've talked about her in a couple of interviews so far, she was. Yeah. She's a real inspiration to you.
She's
when
amazing.
When did that start? That kind of.
Well, I met her during the Vincent Gallo Altamora's parties, actually, where he had invited me to play one night, PJ Harvey to play another night, and Yoko Ono, and Yuka Honda, who's in Chibo Mato and also Ono band. She had given Yoko my albums for her birthday one year, so Yoko was excited to meet me, and then asked me to do the remix of Kiss Kiss Kiss, and so that's it wasn't like we don't talk every day or anything like that. But then recently she celebrated her 80th birthday in Berlin. That's her favorite place in the world. So they did the Plastic Ono band, and that's when I joined them, and then it was the first time she'd actually, I think, seen me on stage, and it was really incredible. This woman that I just have so much respect for, she's just staring at me while I'm singing, going like, wow, you're powerful. Wow. And while I'm singing, I was just like, this is so surreal and amazing. So I think that she decided that it'd be a good idea for me to do the cut piece, because it's the exact opposite of anything I've ever done, because I don't talk, I don't move, I sit still, and the audience has control, because the point of the cut piece is that the audience is allowed to take away what they want from the artist, instead of the artist deciding on what they give to the audience.
And how are you preparing yourself for tomorrow?
I don't think you can. But I've chosen my outfit. Something, because Yoko always said she wore her best outfit because again, this sense of giving. So I have this very special, glittery, gorgeous outfit that I'm gonna part with tomorrow.
It's not a wrench at all, is it? No.
Yeah.
Thinking about activism in today, who are the people that you really admire from the worlds of art or elsewhere within politics?
There's a lot of people. Well, of course, Pussy Riot, Julian Assange. There's, I mean, maybe we can talk specifically about people and give opinions about certain things they've done. It's always interesting too, like certain things that you relate to that they do here, and then they do something else. You know, like not everybody's going to have the same opinions all the time too, and that's really difficult. You have to like pick the moments.
Moments from things
the things they do.
Yeah, because not everything they do, you're saying, is
of course.
Necessarily. Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, kind of within your music, kind of going on, you know, from here. It's in the last year, you know, the last couple of years, you've done things that, well, I think shocked a lot of your hardcore fans. The Peaches Cry Superstar, as you were talking about, which I've been watching clips of online, which is quite something. You know, and to do something that's very establishment in a way, the idea of an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical as one person.
Yeah, I mean,
and singing, you know.
Yeah, again, I'm not trying to be political or like he about it. I love that. I think it's an incredible piece of work, this rock opera that doesn't have any dialogue. You know, it's just the story is told through music alone, but it's not an opera. You know, and I also love the story, and I don't love it for religious reasons. I'm not at all Christian, I just love this story about this person who had a great idea of how people could love each other and get together, you know, like really on a total human level. Again, I'm turning into a hippie. And and was misunderstood because, you know, people thought he was becoming an egomaniac, or people were getting nervous that their power was going to be undermined. And that's just what happens in the world all the time.
And you sang in Monteverdi's Orfeo in Berlin.
I played the part of Orfeo, yeah. I spent 6 months learning this opera in Italian, which I don't speak or read music, so yeah. And
so kind of, you know, was that kind of, did you think that's just an extension of who you are and what you do, or is it you trying to do something very different?
I just love I love a challenge. So
just throw yourself at it.
Yeah, and I mean, I love that I've started in this, you know, I love who, I love that it started with the Teachers of Peaches. That's so great, because I think if you started with singing or something like that, and then you do like that, something like Teachers of Peaches, I don't know if people would be like, is that real? You know, looking back, it looks so calculated, but it wasn't at all.
And also, you've your film premiered recently.
That's right. Yes, I've made my own electro rock opera called Peaches Does Herself, which is sort of kind of not a biography about myself, but a fantastical biography, but in no means a mockumentary.
It's not Spinal Tap, no.
What's that?
Not Spinal Tap.
Not Spinal Tap,
no.
But I love Spinal Tap. And then, which has turned into a film and played at Sundance London here last month.
And the strapline for that was the jukebox musical that got a sex change.
Yes.
I believe, which is a pretty good strapline. You know, looking just to finish off, we'll have a Q&A now in a moment. Looking around pop culture today, can you see your influence in certain areas? You know, it's funny, when I first saw Lady Gaga live, for instance, there she is. But there's something quite interesting in somebody that's so willfully weird, being such a huge pop star. And I know that she is somebody who splits opinion in all kinds of ways, which in itself is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I feel really flattered to be part of an artist who decided to take every great moment from the last 30 years of pop culture, and you know, like from Grace Jones to, you know, Elton John or blah blah blah, you know, Madonna, and I'm included in there. I think she should have been more. Maybe she should have. It should have just more of an educational background about it, and then it would have, you know, wouldn't have made people so what. she's stealing my shit. Everybody, you know, I think everybody from like Princess Julia to Madonna, everyone's like, she's stealing my shit. Like, I did that, you know, the meat dress that was in the, you know, National Gallery of Canada, you know, she's stealing my nation's shit. Yeah. But it's pretty amazing to be kind of
infiltrating
but I would
pop
never
culture.
want to be that. So I'm not like I don't want to be a big pop star. But I think it's actually pretty great that she could be so weird, you know. But as opposed to someone like Björk, who is incredible because she's just weird without any sort of not having to take all the influences. She's just her own thing, and that's completely new.
But it must be, you know, you've infiltrated pop culture in your own ways.
I always said that. I always said that I wanted to, you know, infiltrate the mainstream, and I do believe that. And I said I'm not going to become more than mainstream. It's going to come closer to me, and I truly believe that has happened.
Yes, yes. And on that bombshell, we will have some questions. I don't know if we have a roving microphone or anything like that. Yes, we do. Fantastic. If I can see here now. Any questions? I think there's a hand up in the middle here.
Hey.
Hey.
It's more of a comment, really. I kind of grew up listening to my dad's music, Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen, you know, Fleetwood Mac. And I was sort of coming out in the mid-90s, and I was in a record shop. And I was sort of quite shy at that stage, and this really cute girl comes up to me and hands me your album. And she's like, hey, I think you might really like this. And that kind of started my whole moving away from folk into electro. So thank you for...
Oh, cool. That's very nice. Thanks.
It was a really great kind of moment, you know.
I wondered about how artists jump onto bandwagons. And so, for example, around the Pussy Riot stuff, Madonna decided to do all the stuff in Moscow because she was there, and many people thought she shouldn't be in Moscow because of the gay rights. And since Pussy Riots, you know, Putin is pretty vile, but all the stuff around the reaction about, you know, he's banning Section 28, bringing Section 28, which we had here before. So two questions are sort of how artists jump onto the bandwagon, and then how people like Pussy Riots can actually draw back politics and it become more conservative than before.
About bandwagon, about specifically what Madonna did, I totally think it was awesome because she was one of the superstars who actually did something, and I truly believe that it wasn't like jumping on a bandwagon. And sometimes you see that if an artist or a very famous person jumps on it, I don't think she was trying to further her career or anything like that. Maybe you have a difference of opinion, but you know, she's definitely somebody who believes in that. And for her to take that chance, you know, I don't know. What do you oppose me on that?
Well, Madonna wasn't doing anything before she went to Russia about gay rights. She wasn't talking about it, and she only done it when she got there.
Yeah, but that was made so much more impact than if she talked about it. You know, like she actually went there. I think that's great. I don't agree with artists who don't go there because of certain situations. Like, I don't agree with Morrissey not coming to Canada because of seal clubbing. Come to Canada and tell us.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just do it. Come there.
Yeah, I agree, but she, in her interviews before, she could have said, I'm going to Russia to do that.
Yeah.
She didn't speak of any of that. When she got there, she put sort of Pussy Riots over her breasts. So I think that Madonna is very calculated, which is great, but she does it because it's the cool thing to do and not necessarily because it's the uncool thing to do.
Well, I don't agree. I don't agree. I mean, yeah. I don't agree. I actually found it weird that Lady Gaga never got involved in Pussy Riot. I thought there's someone also who could be using, but so, yeah. And your second question was about how making things more conservative. Yeah, you know, when I said like, and it's happening, I was also like, yeah, but there's still places where it's like you can't hold hands, and and that's something that I think relates to what you were saying before with how activism works in this society. You know, like right now with internet, there's just going to be more opposition, more conservative attitudes, more liberal attitudes, more left. You know, there's just going to be more. It's just going to get more difficult. You know, I don't have control over it, and we will never, and it will just get worse and worse and worse, and just got to be strong and try and
in a way,
do the right thing. It's
interesting because you know, the platform for so much debate
there's
is there,
so
which
much
is fantastic.
platform, there's so much,
But then the flip side of that is the debate could just go on forever with no conclusions. Yeah, it's interesting. Any more questions? There's one down the front. Oh, go on, you go first, yeah.
So I was thinking about, you were saying about for women to say things that are usually expected, even for men to say them, they suddenly become radical or political or controversial. And I was wondering if you felt similarly about being queer, and if being queer already marks people out in some way, or maybe did in the past, as being radical, saying something radical because they're saying something queer. And if, and a second part of that, if you think that that's changing in a good way or a bad way, maybe it's becoming less interesting, and does that mean that as queer is more accepted, or at least LGBT is more accepted, is there kind of a holding back of pushing the boundaries?
Yeah, that's a you know, like there's a big part of queer community that is wondering why people want gay marriage. You know, like why do we want to be married at all? What is marriage? You know, so I support gay marriage for people who want to, and if you're queer and you don't want to get married, don't get married. But some people do. Some people maybe just want to do it for better taxes, and that's fine because that's what, you know, straight people do it sometimes too, or whatever. You know, they should just have equal rights across the board. And I think, okay, here's my horrible same answer. That it gets less interesting, but it also you have new boundaries and you have to keep with them. Like in my this is not a plug, but there's an example in my new movie, Peaches Does Herself. There is full frontal tranny nudity. And that is a real problem in America, because I was supposed to have the film premiere on iTunes, which I was so excited. Yeah, full frontal tranny nudity, iTunes. Like, I like the clash of all these things. And then they took it off 24 hours after saying it was sending us all the messages. We got it all. So, I mean, there's still boundaries, and maybe that's, I don't know. There'll always be boundaries to push.
There'll just be new boundaries, or old boundaries with different clothes on. Anybody else? There's somebody down the front here. Thank you.
Is this going to be a two-parter? Because I think they all have to be now.
I know, I was thinking, I was like,
so many things to ask about. Yeah.
No, my question's kind of going back to a couple of things got mentioned when you were saying about being an activist and how, you know, there's kind of no end to it. And it's a real commitment, sort of, once you make a decision about, right, I'm going to fight for this cause, I'm going to get involved and be a voice, and you know, and then kind of going back to a question just now about the whole Madonna thing and bandwagon, and sort of being very aware of your role as a celebrity, or as a kind of someone who has who's almost like a leader of a large group of people who you know they'll listen to you. So it's just more about kind of how you make your decisions. Whether there's things that have always that you've always kind of felt really passionate about ever since you were kind of big enough to think about sort of big world issues or personal issues that you can see happening for other people, and how consciously you think about, you know, your support for things and getting involved in things.
Being a role model, and the kind of, you know, whether you
I
wear that.
guess, I suppose it's about that.
Yeah, in a way.
Well, I think once you start to have a public persona, you have to start to think about that. I pride myself. Oh, it wasn't calculated to get into music or to make that. But once you start to get some public accolades, you really have to think about that.
Was that a difficult thing to broach?
Yeah, because I at the beginning I was you just but people are gonna they're gonna see you, they're gonna have an opinion about you. We all look at the facade too, like of course I put in my grills and my boy hat for today's discussion. Tomorrow I will be and just I want to have fun with it too, but I don't know. You have to think about that. That's why I think I would never want to be a pop star. Maybe I'm shooting too low, and maybe if I could be a pop star, I could do more, help more. But I don't know.
Answer your question? Yeah. Another one down here.
Presumably the kids who you taught how to be elephants and lions are now a little bit more mature. Have you had any kind of contact from them? I mean, what are they up to now? Do you know how you've kind of infiltrated their? I mean, yeah. Did they become animals?
Yeah. Yeah. They grew wings and flew away. It's funny because this was in Toronto, and there was I met one girl who told me that when I taught her, I don't know, a lot of classes, but I gave them all a guitar pick. And she says, I still have that guitar pick, and I play guitar, and I would have never played guitar if I didn't see like a woman playing guitar. So I still play guitar. And I'm like, let's jam, but we never got to. And then also another boy that I taught, he came out and he came to a Peaches show, and he was like, twice. He's like, you influenced me twice. First, you unleashed this awesome creativity that I'll always remember, and then through Peaches, also, I felt comfortable coming out. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, there's not many people who've had a school teacher that they'll have seen doing what you do. Definitely not me, anyway.
It was interesting too when I was teaching the private classes. All the mothers were around my age, and I never said anything about what I was doing because I was developing Peaches, blah blah blah. And then one day I said, I'm quitting this job. I'm moving to Berlin, and they're like, what? Well, okay. And I'm like, yeah, I actually do. I call myself Peaches, blah blah blah. And then it came out in the local free paper the next week with me on the cover, and there was like a 4-year-old with her dad who didn't know me as Meryl or Peaches, and she said, "Look, Meryl," pointing to the magazine, and then they took it home and was like, "What?" and then I still had a week of work left, but because I made sure I quit at that time before it became a problem or whatever. But then all the mothers were like, what's that? Wow, that's so cool. Your music, it was really nice that the mothers actually were like, what is this about? And yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, last question.
Kid as well. I'm a teacher, and I'd rather spend my day with most kids than most adults. Because they're much more unhinged and creative. So maybe you could start a Peaches kid choir in one of your concerts. I'm wondering about how you can bring kids back into some of the work that you do.
I've been. I did that.
University program.
Yeah. No, I'm talking to. There's a program in Sweden that it's more for high school kids, and I'm going to do a project. Hopefully, we're trying to get that together, an educational program that includes me.
Doing what?
That's. I knew that was
to be decided.
Yeah. It's some sort of, using mediums and I don't know what. I'm going to make up something I can't even. But it's going to be awesome.
That's going to be awesome. And it might
How many times have I said that? Awesome. My go-to word.
Well, you heard it here first. So next year, obviously, you'll be able to come to Meltdown and sign up for a Peaches class or something like that. Thank you very much, Peaches. That's been fantastic.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Lots of stuff going on for the rest of the day today. And obviously tomorrow night, if you want to see Peaches in her beautiful outfit that she's going to be very sad to have cut up, then please do. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you.